All right, you are listening to Faith in the Firehouse. This is a podcast by firefighters talking about Jesus, the fire service, and life around the firehouse. We are not pastors, preachers, or Bible scholars. We're just firefighters after God's own heart, and we want to talk about it. If you want to join in on the conversation, hit the comment section, like, subscribe, share, all that. We appreciate it. This is episode 30, and we have a conversation with one of the best mustaches in the game, Griffin Coiner. Griffin shares his story, tells us all about the man behind the mustache. He's a husband, father, cadre member of Ambassadors of the Craft, founder and co-owner of the family company, Salt Stache Men's Grooming Products. Griffin shares his story with us, and it's a story that I love listening to. I'm going to link some other podcasts that he's been on in the show notes, but I love listening to it because it's just laced with the unmistakable mark of God's presence all throughout. We talk about being present in the moment and focusing on the current task at hand. We talked about why it's important to be thoughtful about your values, your limits, and establish them ahead of time. We talk about leveling up. We talk about prayer. We talk about marriage. We talk about building your faith muscle. I really enjoyed talking with him, and I look forward to hearing more about him in the future and what he's got going on. So without any further ado, here we go.
Lord, just thank you for today. Just thank you for the opportunity just to join Daniel and just enjoy this time together, Lord. Just thank you for technology where we can come together from across the country, across the world, different places, different lives, different everything, God, and come together in the hopes of giving you glory, God. I just pray that you would bless our conversation. Lord, just make it about you. Don't make this about anything trying to give glory to myself or each other or anything like that, God. This is just simply the road that you've brought us on. And I want everyone to be pointed back to you, God. So just bless our conversation, keep it focused, and just please reach at the ears that need to hear. And Lord, I pray just that it wouldn't point anyone to us, but it would point people back to the cross, God. So just enjoy this conversation with us, Lord, and just thank you for the opportunity. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Yes. Awesome. Great prayer, man. Thank you for blessing the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you on, man.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so Griffin Coiner. I'm going to let you introduce yourself here in a minute, but just for our listeners, how I came across you and why I have you on. I started seeing some of your stuff here and there through like Instagram, and I've seen your product, Stache Salt, coming up, and as a mustache guy myself, it comes up from time to time, it catches my eye. But, I'm going to be honest, man, like I've had a mustache for a few years now, and I've tried a few different products. Some of these products are either too greasy or, a lot of them just didn't hold a thick stash like mine. At one point, I think I was using like Elmer's glue to try and keep it together. But, so I finally found a mustache wax that was decent. So I stuck with that one for a while. So when I started seeing your product, I'm like, I don't know if I want to switch. I'm just going to stick with what works. It's a cool idea though. I liked it. But then I heard your testimony on the Fit to Fight Fire podcast with Blake Stinnett from Next Rung. And the name of that episode is called A Prayer of a Mustache Fireman, which is an awesome title. And I don't know how I'm going to do better than that. But hearing your story, man, and how you stepped out in faith and how you trusted God and you trusted his plans for you and you stood up for your values in a society that is increasingly more motivated by the appearance of integrity and the appearance of righteousness, it really inspired me. I was like, this is a good man, and I need to at least try his product. And I did, man. And no lie, I'm not just blowing smoke up your butt. It's a great product. I'm currently using Smooth Bore.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's great, man. Great hold. The wife approves, which is the most important part, right?
That's bonus points right there.
Yeah. What are you using today?
I just put a little oil in last night and hit it with a hair dryer just to fluff it up a little bit. It
Nice.
was a non-wax day for me. So,
Nice.
but yeah, just a more natural look. But I do oils a couple days a week just to keep it hydrated and keep it from drying out, keep it healthy. So
Nice. I got to try that. I did get a couple of your oils in the kit. I haven't tried them yet, but I will, man. It seems to kind of get to this point and then like break off a little bit. So
yeah,
maybe that'll help out. But yeah, man, your story needs to be shared for sure. And I was like, this is definitely someone that I would love to connect with and, have on the podcast, but also just part of what Faith in the Firehouse wants to do is build a network of believers in the fire service, and just build these relationships, build the brotherhood, iron sharpening iron, that kind of thing. Um, so again, very excited to have you on. Like I said, there's a lot of lessons to be learned from your story. And I know that you're a humble guy and you want it all to point to God, which is really awesome because it does. Your story really does. But it's not easy also to be obedient, especially when you're faced with challenges like you faced. So, yeah, who is Griffin Coiner? Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
shoot, man. Well, Griffin, the Stache Salt guy. So I currently live in Utah. I'm still pretty new to Utah. We'll get to all that. But I grew up in Southern California. I lived about 10 minutes from the beach and an hour from the mountains. So growing up, that was an awesome place to live. Um, my parents, this all ties back together, but growing up, you know, my parents went to church. I'm sure people have heard of Saddleback Church. My family started going there when it was across the street at Trabuco Hills High School before it was the mega church that it is now. So we started in the auditorium at Trabuco Hills, went to the tent, and then went to when it became this gigantic mega church. But yeah, just a typical, I guess, Southern California upbringing. I have an older brother, and he's 8 years older than me. But when I was okay, let me back up a little bit. My dad loves all things PD, right? So all his friends are cops. All he ever wanted to do was be a cop. Um, Everything was cops. He's hanging out with cops. I'm hanging out with cops because I'm a little kid. Um, so a few years, I was probably, I don't know, I was very young. My parents were actually in a bad car wreck where my dad was pinned, my mom was pinned. They ended up having to be cut out. But like I said, everything my dad knew was PD, everything. He didn't know anything about fire. And he told me, and I remember this specifically growing up, that when he was hanging upside down in the car, that he heard the rescue tools start, right? There used to be the power unit and connecting all the hoses and everything. And he had no reference point for what those tools were, but he knew what they were hanging upside down in his car. And he said, at that moment, I knew there was hope because help was there, right?
Yeah.
So growing up, that really stuck out to me of like, I really want to be that hope for somebody someday.
That's
Fast
awesome.
forward a few years, my dad he's a wreck for a long time. He had like 22 surgeries. He ended up coding 3 times on the operating table on different days.
Wow.
One of the times when he coded, they actually did compressions for 34 minutes in the
Wow.
OR. And this is like 1989 or 90. So they didn't have Lucas machines and they didn't have all those things. And normally they would have called it, right? I mean, 34 minutes, that's a pretty long time, especially in the hospital setting. But there was a male nurse, which was also unique back then, but he was a decathlete. And for some reason, like he just wouldn't stop doing compressions. They're like, go ahead, stop. He's like, no, I'm good. And he just kept going. And they ended up getting him back. He recovered. He's handicapped. He walks with a limp, but other than that, no other deficits. My mom is also mostly fine now. She's just older now. But
Wow.
I say that because that wreck kind of sent a chain reaction in our family to this day, I would say, where my parents ended up splitting after a while. So my brother was kind of thrown into this dad role, right? He was 8 years older. My dad's now gone. My mom is not telling us the whole story of what's going on. So my brother's kind of thrust into that leadership role. Um, and so, yeah, go. And I'm living with my mom. My dad disappears for a little while. He comes back, and my whole everything changed, right? But fast forward a few years into high school, I'm still living with my mom and all that. Dad's back. And I would say the relationship with my parents, I had one parent that was 100% rules and no relationship. And I had one that was 100% relationship and no rules.
Mm.
Right. So I was living with my mom. A rule for everything. And I turned 15. I was like, this sucks. I'm going to go be with my dad. Right.
Yeah.
All the while we're going to church. You'll hear me say it. I consider myself for a long time that I was a Sunday Christian.
Mm.
I knew all the stories, I knew all the songs, I knew the verses, but there was no heart change. So I moved in with my dad and went from all the rules to no rules. So it was game on, party time. So I ended up partying pretty much every single day for a long time. In the back of my head, there was still like, hey, that fire thing is still kind of cool. But ended up partying and getting into building off-road race trucks. So I went to school, learned chassis fabrication and all that kinds of stuff. Finished high school and moved to Texas. So moved to Texas and started working in an off-road shop.
Nice.
We were building race trucks, doing regular lift kits, all that kinds of stuff. But yeah, I was in the off-road party lifestyle.
Yeah. What brought you to Texas? Was it the off-road stuff?
No, so at that point, all through my high school, my brother was playing professional soccer in Germany. Cool. So he went to school, played college, and then went straight over to Germany and played pro for a while. And when he came back, he was like, hey, I'm starting a family. I'm not moving back to Southern California. I'm going to Texas. It's affordable. You can buy a house. It's a good place to raise a family, all those sorts of things. And me being fresh out of school was like, well, shoot, I want to go be next to my brother again. So my girlfriend of the time, now wife, she was on board. She was a year behind. We started dating in high school. We've been together since I was 16 and she was 15. But I told her, hey, my brother's coming back. We're going to Fort Worth. And she's like, cool. So she applied to a school in Texas and got in. So we're like, we're going to Texas. So got out there, started working in the off-road shop, worked in a few different shops for a few years, and the partying continued. I was still a Sunday Christian, though. I would still go to church. But every other day, even when I got home from church, I was drinking, just doing all the dumb things I could do. And eventually talking with my brother one day, and he was, hey, what about firefighting? And it kind of like the light bulb kind of came on of like, oh yeah, I forgot that's what I'm supposed to do. So I ended up putting myself through EMT school. The off-road shop I was at was super cool. They were supportive. I went through like a summer class of EMT school and fire academy and all that kinds of stuff. Started volunteering first. So I was volunteer for a few years, then went part-time before getting picked up full-time. I worked for a few different departments before everything changed, and I ended up having to leave. I'm sure we'll get into that a little more.
Yeah.
But now I'm back in the fire service, back in Utah, which is a whole nother crazy set of circumstances that God had to have put together because I'm not that good of a planner.
Yeah, he definitely has got a way better plan for me than I ever had. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Man, that's an awesome story. Yeah, I was kind of curious because, like I said, I've heard your story kind of here and there. I'm like, you started in California, you were in Texas at some point, and now you're up in Utah.
Yeah.
A little bit of a nomad.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. do you want to talk about how the world changed and how actually before we get to that, and this might be part of that story, I don't know, but you touched on the things that I like to hear out of somebody's testimony, like their childhood. Did they, you know, what kind of home did they grow up in? Because I think these things all really shape us, right? They shape our beliefs. So, but was there a surrender moment? Like, was there a moment you went from being that Sunday Christian? Was there an event or anything that happened, or a time that the way that I put it is like when I planted my flag and I said, I'm all in and I'm only following you now, Lord? Like, is there a moment like that for you?
Yeah, I don't remember what day it is or anything like that. But like I said, I struggled with drinking for a long time. I drank pretty much every day since I was 15 until 4 years ago, actually last week.
Congrats, man. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. Thank you. But it was always something that I knew was a chain. Um, I knew it was something I should stop. I knew it was something that was holding me back. I knew it was just putting blinders on to real life, whatever was going on. So I pretty much drank every day except shift days, right?
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, my wife and I have been together since we were kids, basically 16 and 15. So she was right there with me. We would drink together, but we would justify like, well, we're at home. We're not going out to bars, right? Like, so there was a justification. And I think we as people are good at doing that of, well, it's not as bad as that thing,
Right.
right? Knowing full well it's not good either. Um,
Yeah.
but we've been going to church together for a long time. She was right there with me. She knew the stories. She knew everything. And we kind of got to this point together where we both knew we were supposed to stop drinking. And we talked about it and prayed about it and everything. And really, it got to the point where we're like, you know what? I know this Jesus thing is real. We've kind of been half in, half out. If we're going to do it, let's go all in. So at the same time, we had decided that we were going to do 75 hard. This was like right at the same exact time of like, hey, we're going to do 75 hard. And one of the things in there is no alcohol. So in my head, I had no plans on stopping drinking forever. You know, I was like, oh, cool, we'll do 75 hard. Day 76, I'll have a beer to celebrate, right? So we started 75 hard. And honestly, for like the first 30 days, it was miserable. Like
Really?
but I was in my Bible. I was reading. Like I was in. I'm doing it. I'm
Hmm.
not quitting. I'm not turning back. But like those first 30 days were absolutely miserable. I hated everything. Like I was mad all the time. Like this sucks. Why can't I just have a beer? Like this is dumb, right? And so we hear and we read in the Bible, like, and we call God the chain breaker, right? Um,
Hmm.
and if you think about a chain breaking, like think about chain links, right? If you actually had enough pressure or force to rip chains apart, they're going to be distorted, right? Like they're going
Right.
to rip, they're going to be out of shape. They're not going to be able to be put back together how they were.
Wow.
And I really feel like that's exactly what God did with me with the drinking. Because like those first 30 days, I was mad. This is sucks. I hate this. And then it was like day 31, it broke. And I was like, I'm good.
Wow.
I'm free. Yeah, it was truly like I'm free. That chain is gone and it can't be put back together.
Wow. That is an awesome illustration, man. I love that. And I'm going to steal that from you because yeah, it's true. And I'm curious at what point, like, so 30 days in, you noticed that like that chain was broken. Um, but there was a change for me in like mental clarity, my perception, my thoughts, my patience, all these things changed like throughout the process to where like it's hard to explain until you go through something where you don't have alcohol in your system for an extended period of time. Because prior to this, like me getting sober, I used to think of sober and drunk. Like I drank Friday night, but I haven't drank yet today on Saturday. I'm sober. But there's a difference once you've had a few days where that alcohol is like truly out of your system. Like, did you experience that?
Yeah, absolutely. In every way. I was more present at home. I was a better husband. I was a better dad. I was better at work. I'm nobody special, right? Like I'm not some super fireman. I'm not anybody crazy, but I like to think that I'm very confident in my competence in the job, right?
Right.
Like I like to think that I'm very good at being a fireman, but I feel like I definitely leveled up when I had the clarity and the focus and I was all in, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense looking from the outside. But when you're inside that circle, it's like, I don't know, at least for me in my like youth, it was like a badge of honor to be able to like hang with the guys and drink and then still perform at work. For some reason, I did not connect that it would affect my performance. And obviously, eventually it did because I hung around in that lifestyle too long.
Yeah.
But man, I just think for the guys that drink, and this is why it's hard for me to share this because I did hit a rock bottom. Like I have to quit, dude. I can't drink. But I would love to share what I've found with guys, and that some people can't relate. But for these guys that drink maybe just a couple times a week, and it's not a big deal, it's not a problem. But I'm like, man, you'd be so much better off without it. Like you really would.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things when you're doing it and you're in it, it's just normal, right?
Yeah.
I know Texas specifically has a very strong drinking culture, not just in the fire department, but just in life. Any gathering, any restaurant, anything is based around drinking. Like whether it's a party or hey, let's go float the river, right? Like everything is based around it. So, but when you're doing it, it's just like cool. That's just normal. That's what we do. So, but until
Yeah.
you take a step back and realize like maybe that's not normal.
Yeah. And that's what's weird too is again, when you're in that, you think that everything is that way. That's how I felt like my life was. And I don't know if this is like the fire department culture. I feel like there is a culture of drinking that's heavier than it should be in the fire department, but it might just be like our culture in America or whatever. But I remember thinking some of those same things. Everything I did, whether it's tubing down to the river or it's going out to the beach, like there was alcohol involved in everything, like all the time. And when I stepped out of this, it's crazy how God has put a lot of people around me because I thought I was going to be on an island by myself. Like, and I've been sober a year and a half, and I don't feel like I don't feel like my social life has suffered at all. And now I see somebody walking down the beach with a beer, and I'm like, that's kind of it sticks out to me as odd now. Not like I don't like judge them like, oh, you have a beer, but it just goes to show like your perspective. That's really cool,
Absolutely.
man. So I love hearing that from guys like you who did decide to quit for whatever reason, and they realize that it is better for them. And moving on in your story, there's definitely a couple things that I wanted you to share specifically. Your story is always heavily involved in faith. I've heard, like I said, I've heard you talk on a couple different platforms now. You've never shied away from it. It's always been a big part of your story. But for our audience, why don't you share how Stache Salt started and the prayer that you had for Stache Salt and how that led you to where you are now, like from Texas to Utah?
Yeah, absolutely. So believe it or not, I know a lot of guys have heard it, but Stache Salt started as like a happy little mad scientist experiment gone well. I was like you, like I grew a mustache and I had some other stuff, and I was like, this kind of sucks. And we were actually out at the training, and a buddy of mine was like, "Why don't you just make your own?" So, good idea. So I did some mad scientist research and made a few different blends and combinations and scents and everything, and kind of just gave it to my guys at the firehouse. I was like, "Hey, check it out," and people liked it. So I put it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever of like, "Hey, look what I did," and people were like, "Oh, cool. How do I buy it?" So I was like, "Oh crap." I wasn't planning on selling any of this. So I told my wife, I was like, hey, we need a logo. So I said it needs a skull, a mustache, and a fire lid. So
Nice.
she came up with the logo. I'm sure you guys see it everywhere, hopefully at least.
That's an awesome logo.
But yeah, I never sat down with this grand plan to start this giant mustache wax company. Like I said, it kind of just happened on accident and took off. And I'd say we played catch up for a long time because it was like, oh crap, how do we do this? Like I didn't have a business plan. I don't know how to do all this. I'm just a fireman that melted some wax together and some other ingredients and did some mad scientist stuff. But it started selling quite a bit. And my old chief, where I used to work, got diagnosed with cancer. And we were a smaller department before I went to the big city. And it kind of hit his family really hard. Obviously, they were struggling with the bills, but it hit our community hard. So I was like, shoot, we're making a bunch of sales. Let's just use this to give back to him and his family. Like, why not? So we did. We sold for some months and gathered some money together and went to the Christmas party. And hey, Chief, we have a gift for you. Just because we can and we love you. Here you go. And it basically, like, it just stuck. So that's still our mission. That's still what we do. Here we are 7.5 years later. We're still donating to families. We're involved with other nonprofits like Next Rung and stuff like that. It's basically just a big mission, just to give back where we can, right? Like, we're not the biggest company. We don't have millions of dollars to give away. Maybe someday we will.
I'll pray that prayer for you.
Yeah, there's a song that's really been playing in my head lately. We all know the story of the fishes and loaves. And it's not about how much you give or what you do and all that. It's about the attitude behind it. It's about the heart behind it, right? So I'm trying to be grateful about what we are able to give. And we've been able to give quite a bit. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It's business, and the world changes and goes up and down and all that. So we just do what we can when we can. And we've learned to step into that role. But yeah, I was doing that for a few years, and it was like the ultimate side gig, right? It was like, man, this is sweet. I make a little extra money. We get to give. It basically paid for my family and I to go camping for a while. It's like, we go camping all the time. Like, we'll just use that as like our going camping money and all that kind of stuff. Fast forward a few years, everyone was super supportive and it's doing well. And I ended up getting hired at a new department. Went to the big city, and I would say overall people were supportive, but not like it was in the smaller town. It was like, hey, you're wearing our shirt now, so you identify with us, not what you're doing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But it just kept growing and growing, and just kept going. And that's what we do, is we still donate to families. But we got to the point, before we did 75 hard, like it's all about the same time period in the same few months, where my wife and I were really getting serious about our walk with the Lord. And we're like, what are we supposed to do with Stache Salt? Is this just supposed to be a side gig forever? Is this supposed to grow? What are we supposed to do? So we really started praying, God, if you want this to grow, I want it to be explainable that only you made it happen. And we prayed that every day for about 6 months straight. Just, God, if you want this to happen, it has to be explainable that only you made it happen. And looking back now, I can see all the steps we've taken since then. But we read about these heroes of faith in the Bible: Peter walking on water, Daniel in the lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego thrown into the fire, right? And we're all like, oh man, that's so cool. I would love to be that bold. Until it's your turn.
Right.
then God's like, cool, put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. Careful what you pray for.
Exactly. You're going to pray big prayers. You better be prepared to take big steps of faith.
Yeah.
So basically, we prayed that for a long time, got sober. I'm clear-headed. I'm all in. I'm following Jesus, right? And I show up to the fire station one morning. This is during COVID times. And we show up one morning, they say, hey, by the way, now you have to do this. Here you go, or else. And I said, no. They're like, what do you mean no? I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. So basically they said, well, if you're not going to do that, we're going to send you home without pay. And then before I left, they said, all right, here's the deal. We don't actually care if you do this or not. We just need you to make sure your name ends up on this piece of paper. So I was actually encouraged to lie quite a few times before I left. And I had already made my decision. This isn't a road I was going to go down. This isn't something I was willing to bend on. I'm not perfect. I've lied plenty of times in my life. I'm a messed up dude just like everyone, but I knew, like, I have this walk with the Lord. He's called me to take a stand. He's asked me to be bold, because I was asking him, give me a chance to be bold, right? And he said, all right, put your money where your mouth is. So I ended up getting sent home that day. Maybe it was me just being petty or something, But before I left, I said, this is an interview question that every single one of us answered the same exact way. You're at the firehouse and everyone's lying about something. You have an opportunity to do the right thing. What are you going to do? I said, every single one of us said we were going to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And I was one out of 1,000 that either didn't do it or didn't lie about it. So let me be very, very clear that I'm not bad mouthing any departments.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bad mouthing any people. I'm only able to answer for what I was called to do. So anyone else, it was completely up to them, and I'm not bad mouthing anybody. But I just knew that I had a line in the sand that I wasn't willing to cross.
Yeah. So a couple points on that I think are really good is first of all, thank you for standing up and doing that. Just as a fellow firefighter, as a fellow American, a fellow human being, in a culture where that's kind of become the norm is to have the appearance that we're doing the right thing. Virtue signaling. It's more important to to say that I did something to help the problem or whatever, and it's not so much about actually helping and actually doing the right thing. And a lot of people, like I said, thank you, because there's a lot of people who maybe agreed with you, but maybe their faith isn't where yours is, and maybe they're not in a position to be able to just like put their career on the line. Um, but more people need to do that. And that's also why I really wanted to share your story, is that when you do these kinds of things, and I'm not saying that everyone should, like, you should have ahead of time, like you did, you decided ahead of time, this is what I'm going to do. So it wasn't an impulse. It wasn't an emotional moment. You decided ahead of time, this is what we're going to do. This is a line I'm not willing to cross. And you stuck to it, because there's probably a lot of people who said that, but when they really looked at it, they're like, dude, we're a single income family. We need the insurance. We're not like, yeah, that's what I plan to do. But as soon as I get some money in the bank, you know, or like I have something to stand back on, and like, that's true faith. And when you make that decision based on faith and God is involved in that decision, I love how in your story, like how you trusted God with your career. And this was, like you said, a big city department, or bigger department in your area, that like, it's like, I think of where I work, and like, this is the place to work. Would I walk away from this job? Like, that'd be really difficult to do. So I praise you for your obedience. And again, I know that you're going to point everything back to him, and that's where it needs to be pointed. But I think we should, take note of your obedience and your faith.
Yeah, I think people, and this is, like I said, this isn't to point to me or give me a pat on the back or whatever, but this is something I've kind of learned, or like a definition that I've had in my head of integrity. Everybody talks about integrity, doing the right thing when nobody's looking, right? But I think it goes a step farther of deciding ahead of time that you're going to do the right thing, no matter what it costs you.
Yeah, that's huge. Make those decisions ahead of time.
Yeah. That way you're not, like you said, it's not an emotional, I'm sitting around the table with 10 of my best buddies and like, what do you mean you're not going to do it? It's like, I've already decided.
Yeah, not a question. But yeah, and also to kind of emphasize that what you experienced was not unique. Like, that happens all over the place. Not just fire departments, but I think in general, like, people were doing things because they felt like they had to do something, and instead of really getting to the root of what the issue is. So yeah, no negativity meant to be cast on that, and I know you don't want that either.
Yeah.
But it just, to me, it kind of, those kinds of things become a slippery slope. Like, I've seen that in places that I've worked, where they implement something that kind of doesn't really work, so guys end up like kind of bending it, or just, pencil whipping it or whatever, just to make it work. And that's fine in the short term, but then something else gets added on that, and now it's like you're doing all these things that you should have been doing, and not like, they're not all getting done the way they're supposed to, because nobody addressed the issue in the first place, that, hey, this system doesn't really work well, or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if that was a little off, but they add up, man. And yeah, so Sorry, continue on. You decided you weren't going to cross that line.
So basically, I'd been praying that big prayer of, God, if you want this to happen, it needs to be explainable that only you made it happen. And got to the station that morning, everything played out like it did. And I felt like that was God saying, all right, do you trust me? Like, how much do you trust me?
Did you feel in that moment like that it was a test of faith? Were you connecting the dots of the prayer that you had been praying to this moment?
Yeah, 100% of like, hey, I got to step out of the boat. You can't walk on water if you don't step out of the boat. So I knew that was, I didn't know what was coming. I didn't know what it was going to look like. I had no clue of anything, but I knew I had to step out of the boat to be able to take the next steps. So let me share something, or I guess just rewind a little bit. I started the fire service in 2010, and like I said, I graduated high school. I was partying before I was even interested in EMT school. Like I said, that conversation with my brother is what kind of sparked the fire service back into my life. But I think it was like 2007 or 8. My wife and I were walking into the gym, and I heard the audible voice of God saying, "You're going to go work at this department, and you're going to be a lieutenant."
Wow. No way.
So that's what he told me, like the audible voice. And then fast forward, I go to the smaller department, and then I end up at that big department, the one that he told me. He's like, "You're going to work there," and I did. And then all that happened, and I ended up leaving. I was like, "Well, I sure wasn't a lieutenant, right?"
Ah,
So I ended up leaving, being like, "Well, I guess I got part of it right." So, anyways, we'll close that in a little bit,
yeah.
but yeah. So I left the fire department, went home, called my wife. Hey, I'm on my way home. Um, Here we go, basically. And she was 100% on board. Like I said, we've been in unison on prayer. We were on the same page of like, this is what God is asking us to do. And trying to, I was at home for a few weeks, and they started calling me like, "Hey, are you coming back?" Like, "Hey, when are you coming back?" I said, "Do I still have to do that thing?" They said, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, I guess I'm not coming back then." Um, so I ended up writing out some vacation time and sick time and all that for a few months while I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Um, at the same time, a buddy of mine who's a realtor, everybody has a fireman realtor friend, right? So my buddy calls me. He goes, "Hey, I have someone that wants to buy your house." I was like, "Well, my house isn't for sale. We just finished remodeling everything, like all new floors, cabinets, like I built countertops. We gutted this house and started completely over, and like all I had left was baseboards." And he's, "Hey, someone wants to buy your house." I was like, "Well, it's not for sale, but here's the garage code. They can go look at it, I guess." They went and looked at it and made us an offer. And I was like, that doesn't quite make it worth it. So I kind of just forgot about it for a week or so. And he called me back. He's like, "Hey, they actually want to give you this much." I was like, "Oh, I guess we're selling our house." So
Wow.
it's under contract and all that, and we don't have a place to go. Um, I just left the fire department. I was in the process of leaving. I had no plans on leaving ever. Nobody leaves the department I was at. It's like, it's the one, right?
Yeah.
Um, Now we're selling our house. We don't have a place to go. We got to figure this out in 30 days. And I mentioned earlier, we always go camping. My wife and I have been camping together since we were kids. She's tent camped with me every weekend for the past 20 years. And I was like, we were at the point where I was like, she deserves a camper. Like we should get a camper, right?
Mm.
So all this happened at the same time, and we found one that we really liked, but it was a unicorn. Like we could not find it anywhere that had it. I would call, "Oh yeah, it's sold," like instantly. So sell our house, or we're under contract, and we're watching YouTube videos like, "Oh, that'd be the perfect one." Like all these, like if we're gonna do it, we need some other things. And that one popped up like an hour from us. And I called them. I was like, "Hey, do you have this one in stock?" They're like, "Yeah, I just got here." It's like, "I'm on my way." So we went and we bought a camper, and we ended up selling our house and moving everything into a camper. So While we were in Texas, I had a full shop for Stache Salt. I mean, it's doing well, it's growing, all that. And I have like a full shop at our house, and I basically condensed it all down to 5 of those yellow bins.
Mm.
So we move into the camper, and where are we going? We don't know. We don't have anywhere to go. So we just started traveling. We just hit the road, and we had a booth already set up for FDIC that year. So we went to FDIC, we went to some other fire conferences, some other trainings, and we didn't really know what to expect. I was kind of like, I guess I'm done with the fire service. This is my new role of just kind of help the helpers, just travel around, go to conferences, help with trainings every once in a while. And I'm just going to be the Stache Salt guy at these trainings. We traveled around for probably 2 years, almost 2 years, going all around. But every time we would go somewhere, we would come through Utah. This was kind of like a thoroughfare of where we would travel from east to west coast, like north, south, whatever. We'd always travel through here and stop for a few days. And there were some guys here that were customers, and they ended up inviting us to the station like a handful of times. They ended up inviting me and the whole family there for Thanksgiving dinner one year. And they really tried, they started recruiting me like, hey, come on, man, we got an open spot. Come on. And I told them no for almost a year. I was like, nah, like, no, thanks. In the meantime, I bought some land in Colorado, and to be honest, I was kind of disgruntled and pissed off at the world. While I was fully in line and obedience, I was still just like, dang, man, like my dream job was taken away, right?
Yeah.
So I was mad at people. I lost a lot of brothers, a lot of people that as soon as I wasn't wearing the same T-shirt, I wasn't in the club anymore.
Wow.
But at the same time, I had a ton of people that came out of the woodworks to show support too, right? So I fully planned on moving to Colorado or just stopping through Utah every once in a while. And they really started trying to recruit me like, hey, come on. And so I sat down with the chief one day, and he kind of lays it out. Here's what we got. Here's the expectations. Like, we want you to come. We have a spot. And I basically told him, no, thank you. I said, Chief, I've been through 3 fire academies. Thanks, but no thanks. None of my certs transfer over. Like, I appreciate the offer, but no, thank you. Mm. And I was sitting in his office, and this is what he told me. He said, we hire people, not certs. We'll worry about that later.
Wow.
So I was like, can he do that? Like, that's not any fire service I've ever known, right? I'm used to thousands of dudes testing for 10 spots, right? Like, that was when we grew up. That was so competitive, and that was what I was used to. And now they're basically like, I didn't even fill out an application. Wow. And they were like, here you go. So we prayed about it for a long time and really felt like this was God asking us to get back into the fire service. Stache Salt's still growing. We're doing that full time. We ended up coming to Utah, and I'm the new guy, right? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. I'm going to earn my spot. I'm going to play the new guy games. I'm going to fight for dishes. I'm going to do all that stuff. Just because you gave it to me doesn't mean I'm not going to still earn it, right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
But there comes an opening. Shortly, they're like, hey, we got to just get all your certs transferred over. And this comes back to what I told you a little bit ago. All I've ever loved doing is driving a fire truck, right? Truck engine. I love pumping. I love positioning the aerial. I love operating. I love being an engine operator, truck operator. Like, that is my sweet spot. I love it. And like I told you, before I even got back in the fire service, God told me, he said, you're going to work for this city and you're going to be a lieutenant, right? He didn't say you're going to be a lieutenant in this city. So you're going to work for this city and you're going to be a lieutenant. And I ended up in this city, and I work the only place I've ever heard of that calls an engineer a lieutenant. And I promoted about a year after being here. So he fulfilled that promise before I was walking with him, before I was actually had my head on straight. He gave me that. And I had a long, bumpy road to get there. Mm-hmm. But once I was obedient, he's like, all right, here's the rest of that promise.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I love your story, man, because there's no other way. Like only God could have orchestrated these kinds of things, man.
Exactly.
It is awesome. That is great, man. Yeah, I just think everything, like I said, your story needs to be shared because we have so many people in this world who just, um, you get worldly advice. I just want to talk quickly about worldly advice versus godly advice. The world tells you to control your own destiny. The world tells us we need to secure our own future. The world tells us we need to secure our own future and avoid unnecessary risk, play the odds. But faith says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit yourself to him and he will make your path straight. That's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And yeah, just it's tough because so many people, like for me, it's this last year or so, it's been like, it's again, like you said, when you're in those positions, it's easy to say like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But being obedient through and through, like all throughout your day, all throughout your decisions, like it's not easy, but when you do it, when you commit to him, he'll do amazing things in your life.
Absolutely. And it's just like any muscle, right? The faith muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it gets. Because those first couple things, like stepping out and walking away and all that, were scary, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to sink if I try to step out of a boat. Like, that's crazy, right? But the more I've been obedient, and hear me, I'm not perfect. I still mess up all the time. I'm still just a regular dude. Um, but the more you trust him and the more you keep seeking him, the more he shows up and builds that muscle of like, he is faithful every time. And it's not always what we think it's going to be, right? But it's
Yeah.
always, there's usually curveballs, and it's like, oh, I didn't see that part of the story, or I didn't see that little detail. But he does, he shows up.
Yeah. When you trust him with little, um, it says one who is faithful in very little is also faithful with much. So when you trust him with your career, you trust him with your business, he's going to bless you with more than you can handle. Put you in a situation where you're at now, your business is doing well. You're in a position where you're a lieutenant and an operator, your sweet spot. Man, that is cool.
If I could share a Bible verse that goes with that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've all heard it. Psalm 119, 105. Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people hear that and it's cool on posters on the walls and stuff, but like, what does it really mean, right? Um, in those biblical days when people were traveling at night, they would tie candles to the top of their sandal. So literally, that candle gave them just enough light for the next one step. And that's a huge thing. And faith is like, God will show us, like, here's where you're going. And we want the whole roadmap, right? We want,
Yeah.
like, I need to know 10 steps ahead what my plan is. And then 20 steps, what am I going to be? It's like, whoa, just worry about the next one step. Because if you don't take that first step in the right direction, you'll be off course when you get downrange a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So trusting them, like, hey, take the one step at a time and don't worry about the 10 steps ahead.
Yeah, that's awesome. And think about the fire service, like how those little things can snowball into a major incident. That's why we practice getting masked up quickly, and the little things like, you know, again, checking your air pack, and those things can snowball into, I think if you look into, and I'm not like, I don't get too deep into like these kinds of studies and stuff. I've heard enough of them here and there, but like a lot of times when there is like a Mayday incident, it's usually a bunch of small things that snowballed into a bigger thing.
Yeah.
There was the one story where the guy had his air pack like free float or something while he's holding the elevator. Do you know that story? It was like in
No, shoot, I know what you're
Chicago.
talking about.
Yeah, so basically, like his pack malfunctioned, and I don't want to get it wrong, but basically he was supposed to be holding the elevator for the other guys, and his pack like malfunctioned, and I'll have to find it and link it. But it's a good example of how like that little thing can snowball into a major event. So he ends up, because that happens, he ends up letting the door shut, and the elevator drops to the floor, leaving those guys trapped on the floor, if I remember correctly. But yeah, man, like if you focus on each little step, do everything perfect that you're focused on right there, like God's telling you, do this right now, then, just worry about that. And like for me, having faith, because I'm an over analyzer, overthinker. I get analysis paralysis. But since I've really trusted God with everything that's going on, I'm like, I'm going to focus on this right here. I'm going to focus on this conversation with Griffin Coiner right here and let everything else, like once this is done, then I'll move on to the next thing. It's really changed my life, like having that. And if you look at how Jesus focused on the people that were right in front of him, no matter where he was going, he was always focused on that person right in front of him. He was never in a hurry so that he missed, what was right in front of him.
Yeah.
I had a note here from a little study earlier, but it was worry and hurry rob you of the fruitfulness. I thought that was pretty good.
That's good.
Pretty good little note. Cause
that's good.
When you're in a hurry, you're short with people, you're not going to be patient. Like that's the first fruit of the spirit, right? Patience, or the love is patience. That's the first of the love characteristics. But either way, it is a fruit of the spirit. Yeah. So sorry to get you derailed there, but
it's good.
You had another verse that you kind of, it's kind of your, would you say it's your company motto or your company staple or like a guiding light for you?
Yeah. So we have Matthew 5:13. It's all over our website. It's on our business cards. It's everything. We are the salt and light, right? The salt of the earth, the light of the world. And Jesus talks about that, the Sermon on the Mount. I think I've heard it explained 100 different ways, and some people think this means this, some people think this means this. But as we put that into Stache Salt pretty early on, really before I was, I guess, living it, if that makes sense. While I was still a Sunday Christian, I was like, still, this needs to be in here. This needs to be important. But in biblical times, or just in those old times, salt was super valuable, right? It was used for multiple things. It was used for healing. It was used to preserve meats. It was used to add flavor and light. They didn't have electricity, obviously, but it's what makes you able to see it. It guides you. It's all those things. So something very early on for me, or just catching the vision of being the salt and the light, of being the salt, is what people can hear. Like, I need to speak and spread the gospel in a way that's appealing. It adds flavor, right? It gives healing. It preserves the truth, right? And then the light is what people can see, my actions, right? So I actually have, I don't know if you can see it, I have salt and light tattooed on my hands. Nice. As a constant reminder of, I'm supposed to be spreading the good news with my words and with my actions, not just one or the other. Like, it has to be a full package deal, right? Yeah. So that's just something, I mean, we try to include it in everything. Our core values as Stache Salt and our family, our faith, family, freedom, in that order. So we have God first. We believe Jesus died on the cross, rose for our sins. Amen. Family is, I think this is getting in the weeds, but we really made an effort or a point to say family is blood or bond. We know not everybody has a strong home life. We know there's broken families. We live in a culture of terrible, terrible things. So family could be your best friend down the street. It could be the guys at the fire station. It could be your friends at church, or it could be like your paternal family, right? So we were very, very intentional about making that, like, just because you say family doesn't mean blood, right? It's blood or bond.
Yeah. I mean, we were adopted into the family, right? As Gentiles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we wanted to include those. And then freedom, on our website, we have it as to own your sovereignty. Whatever it is, you own it. I submit to Christ, but whatever happens, like, I take ownership of it. I'm responsible for providing for my family. I'm responsible to be a good steward of the resources I have, all those things. So yeah, like I said, not only do we have that as the values of Stache Salt, but those are our personal family values as well.
Yeah, I like that. I've been trying to develop a kind of an idea that as someone who has had to take complete ownership, I follow Jocko Willink and extreme ownership and a lot of those things. But the other side of that I found in the last like year is like having extreme gratitude, because there is this balance between free will and God's sovereignty, So I like that saying is, you know, taking complete ownership of that part of it.
Yeah,
That's awesome,
absolutely.
man. So what's in the future for Stache Salt and Griffin Coiner?
Man, right now, I'm enjoying driving a fire engine, and I still say I'm full-time Stache Salt and part-time fire. We're still growing. It's just my wife and I. She does all the computer, all the website, all the designs, everything. I'm the idea guy. I just spout things off, and she does computer magic and makes it come to life. And then I'm the mad scientist. So I make everything. I still ship everything. Obviously, she'll do that if I'm on shift or whatever. But just to continue growing this, our mission, like I said, is to spread the salt. That's how we say it. So I believe that reaching people with the gospel is the goal. Mustache wax is the how. So um, I'm not going to beat anybody over the head with the Bible or shove it down their throats any chance I get, but we're not going to shy away from it either. We'll have real conversations. I'll tell you exactly where I've been and where we are, but just to continue to grow a community. We're really making a push. We're attending a lot of conferences and trainings and stuff like that. We've kind of dubbed my wife as snack mom of the fire service. So we go to all these trainings, and I instruct with a few different cadres, but I'll instruct and take classes and everything, and then she'll set up our booth, and we just bring snacks and coffee and drinks and everything for everybody for the weekend. And it's just another way that we can serve and give back. We really want to, I know, like what you're talking about, of building men and building families and building the faith in the firehouse. I think before we build good firemen, we have to build good men.
Yeah.
And so we're really, I don't want to say like making a push, but we're, I guess, trying to model like, hey, this is a family effort. Her and I are doing it together. My kids come out to the trainings, they're running around the hot grounds. Um, a lot of guys talk about, well, I have my fire family and then I have my regular family, right?
Mm.
Like, no, it needs to be intertwined. They need to be the same. We need to bring back family dinners at the station. We need to bring back kids playing on the trucks. Like, we need to do all that stuff. So we're trying to just, I guess, do what we can with what we got, and just, we want to build strong families, because I feel like for a long time there was, hey, the old guys were on their fifth divorce and drinking every night, and that's not to throw stones. It's just, that's just a culture of what happened over a long, hard career life. I mean, this career will give you a lot, but it'll also take a lot, right? So we're really just trying to really push strong families again, and just making that part of what we do as Stache Salt, and that's just a way that we give back. So just continue to grow that and just keep attending stuff, keep being able to help families, partner with other organizations, and do fundraisers and all that stuff. I hope that we'll have a full team of mustache wax melting gremlins someday in here, just shipping orders all day and getting it all taken care of. I would love to keep it growing. So,
dude, that is awesome. It's definitely something that the world needs more of, is good, strong families. And I just want to share a statistic, because definitely the marriage thing is something that's been on my heart and a lot of the other faith in the firehouse guys' hearts to talk about. And it's something that we're going to, at some point, really dig into, because it's kind of been, just like you said, it's almost just one of those things you're promised in the fire service. There's a lot of good things, but it's almost one of these things like you're almost promised alcoholism, PTSD, and a divorce at some point. And that needs to change. We know better now. And again, not like to like criticize other guys or whatever, but there's a lot more resources now. We know a lot more. So having a strong marriage is totally doable. It's a must to keep you strong. But one thing I wanted to point out about, you and your wife is your faith together, and that you guys, that in your prayer life together. And I don't know if you've heard this statistic, you may have, but I'm going to share it as much as I can. That there is like a less than 1% divorce rate among married couples who pray together. Like that is a staggering statistic. Like there's nothing else that even comes close to that. So me and my wife heard that, like we pray together. I would like to say every single night, but we're working on it. But like before, we would kind of separate and do our own little prayers before bed, and we would pray together here and there before meals. But like actually getting some prayer time together,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's, like I said, that's a staggering statistic. If you look it up, less than 1% a divorce rate among, and it's not among Christians or non-Christians.
Yeah.
There's not really a difference between Christians and non-Christians. It's only among those that pray together. So,
Yeah. That's awesome.
yeah. Did you have anything else that you wanted to leave the audience with today? I'm really stoked to have you on here, man. I appreciate you having this conversation with us and sharing your story with the Faith in the Firehouse crowd. But yeah, before I leave, anything you want to add?
No, I guess my only thing would be, like I said before, when we read about these giants of the faith, these guys taking these huge steps of faith, it's really cool and it's really inspiring until it's your turn. There's so many reasons to not do something, right? There's a book I read called The Dream Giver, and it talks about all these different stages. Yeah, you should look it up, make a note. It's a great book. It's biblically based, but kind of like a fiction story of this guy going through his journey of life, and he gets to certain roadblocks, and they're called border bullies. And like the border bullies could be your friends, it could be family, it could be coworkers, it could be whatever, basically encouraging you to go back to the land of familiar rather than to where you're supposed to go. Where a breakthrough happens and where all these things happen is when we take these steps of faith. They don't all have to be these gigantic jump off a cliff and have no idea what's going to happen. But I guess my advice or encouragement would be like, if you really feel like God is leading you to do something and it's scary or it's hard or unsure, whatever, you just got to take that first step, because that first step will build your confidence, will build your strength. You'll see God keep his promise, which will get you in the right spot for the next step. So I know we already talked about that, but like, be willing to take that first step, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, because I promise you, God shows up over and over and over again.
Yeah, God's got you, man. If it's a step in obedience, he's going to take care of you. And
yeah,
that's awesome, man. Well, Griffin, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. I appreciate you again being here, and I'll close this with prayer.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you for the interaction here and the relationship with Griffin Coiner. Father, I pray that just you use us to help continue to build your kingdom. And I pray the words here that might help somebody step out in faith or help grow their faith. I pray that they reach the ears that need to hear them, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome, man.